Today we're going to be tying my version of the Chernobyl Ant. So we're going to start with a size 2 eagle claw hook fresh out of Walmart. This is one of the cheapest flies you could possibly tie. So you're going to put that thing in the vise, secure it down, and then you're going to get some thread to tie on a base. I'm using brown thread. You can pretty much use any color because it's just going to get covered up. I also use red sometimes because red will be kind of like a hot spot at the tip of the fly when you tie the final knot in. Once your line is secure, I usually take a little bit of glue to add the glue to the thread to make it extra sticky. This time I decided not to do it. Instead, I'll just get some Krystal Flash threads, tie those in near the back of the hook, and then bend them in half and tie the rest backward as well. Then you're going to take some Maribou. I, for some reason, had these enormous Maribou feathers. You really don't need that much. I just take like a small section of it, and then you're going to tie that in. You want it to be about the same length as the Krystal Flash, but the nice thing about it is that the tips of it are easy to pull off. So once you tie it in, if the Maribou goes too far past the Krystal Flash, you can just pull them off at the end, and that actually makes them flare out and swim a little bit better in the water. So once you've got that done, then you're going to start to figure out exactly how you want to shape your foam. This, again, is just super cheap foam from Walmart, one of my favorite stores. Usually, it's a good rule of thumb to have it be about the size of the width of the gap of the hook. And then I always make it like, I don't know how much longer, but a little bit longer than either side of the shank of the hook, so that there's excess that you'll end up cutting off in case. It's just better to make it too long instead of too small. So make sure it's a little bit longer than both sides of the hook. You can just experiment with it. You should probably tie 5 to 10 of these before you get really good at it. And then you'll be good to go and know exactly how long you really want it to be. I always put a little bit of glue either at the beginning or at this stage so that it really has a place for that foam to connect to the hook itself. And so you're going to do a couple of loose wraps near the front inside of the hook, and then you're going to tighten it, and then you're really just going to, some people with the Chernobyl Ant will make these little sections that make it look like parts of the body of a big ant. Instead, what I'm going to do is wrap that with chenille, so you can just tighten it really nice so that it's nice and tight on that hook. That's fine. Then what we're going to do is take the second slice of your foam, tie it in with a few loose wraps, and then get a little bit tighter. Not so tight that it'll cut through the foam. You have to be careful of that with, especially if you're using a lighter, thinner thread. I'm using 170, I think. I'll take some glue and make sure that my two pieces of foam are stuck together right there. Then, next step is to take this Krystal Flash fluffy chenille, and I think it's a dark olive color that I'm using, which I really, really like. But you can use practically any color that's going to stand out and be flashy. You're going to tie it in underneath the flap of the top part of the foam, and then you're actually going to have to figure out a place to put it that's out of the way enough for you to tie in these Sili Legs. I eventually figured out that the best way to do it is to just hang it on one of the dials of my vise if the material is long enough. So next you're going to take the Sili Legs, make sure that the little parts that connect them are gone, and then I cut them in half. After you've cut them in half, you're going to take them. Some people, what they'll do is they'll do like 2 at a time. I don't do that. I just do it like this. I do them 1 at a time. Even though they're a little bit long, it's nothing fancy. I'm sure I could save time and be more ergonomic with how I tie this fly, but this is kind of how I do it. So I'll tie those in loosely, then I'll tighten it up a little bit, and then once they're in, I'll roll the thread all the way forward, and then you're going to do a forward wraps with that chenille. Tie that in, snip it off, and then I'm probably going to put a little bit of glue here to secure down the foam, and then really press tight so that it's going to stay on there really nice. So you take the glue. This is just normal Loctite super glue. Stuff is super cheap and works great. And then you're going to press that down, make sure that it's nice and connected. Do a few loose wraps. Keep putting some pressure on it so that they stick together. And then for when you tie this fly, don't use any nice scissors that you have. Like, I go through a ton of scissors, fly tying scissors. I always save my old worse scissors for tying these flies because there's so much glue that you cut through, so you don't feel as guilty about ruining them. Make sure you add a second row of Sili Legs, and then I always add a little, I forget what they call them, but it's kind of just like something to help you see the fly, a little piece of orange foam. And I think you can get this foam for like $8 or $9. You can get like 50 pieces of it. And then the hooks are also super cheap. So this fly is an extremely economical fly. You're going to tie it off, and then what I'll always do is make sure there's enough glue on that big thread dam at the end so that the fly won't fall apart, because this gets torn up by all kinds of fish. Usually what'll happen is you throw it and let it sit, and then perch will hit it and hit it and hit it until a bass or a big perch gets it. And it's just such a fun fly to fish. You can use it with a hopper dropper rig, or you can just fish it by itself. And it's just truly one of my favorite flies to fish with. I like cut the legs at the end, make sure they are the right length. Honestly, if they're too long, sometimes I like it better when they're too long. It almost looks ridiculous, but again, these fish are not that picky and they're not that smart, at least the ones that I'm fishing for the bass and perch. So this fly crushes it. I hope you guys get a lot of good uses out of it. If you stay tuned, I'll actually show you a couple clips of me catching some perch and bass here in Austin, Texas on Lady Bird Lake. Yeah, there you go. That's my Chernobyl Ant. All right, so here I am fishing on Town Lake or Lady Bird Lake. I'm targeting perch and bass, and this is my first cast with the fly of the day, and greatness.
Money. That's pretty good.
So pretty happy with the results right off the bat. I caught this nice bass. I say nice, it's relative. For catching it on a 3-weight with a fly, it's pretty nice, but I know some of the conventional fishermen, oh, it's only 1 pound. But, you know, I absolutely love catching any size fish with this rod. It's so much fun. It's a nice, girthy, largemouth bass, and it was the first of a lot of fish I caught this day. One of the fun things about using flies on this lake is that usually it's conventional fishermen, so the fish don't see flies quite as often. And here's going to be another bass coming up.
There's a bass.
So the way that I'm fishing this fly that's I've found to be most effective is I'm going to throw it so that it lands a little bit harder than most fly fishing purists would let their flies land on the water, because it definitely gets the attention of all the fish below, especially here underneath Barton Springs where I'm generally fishing. And I'll let it sit for like 1,000, 2 1,000, and then I'll start twitching it a little bit, and by then you pretty much know if you're going to get hit or not. If it doesn't work, then you just cast it again. It's another pretty one.
Yeah, baby.
So I think I caught about 8 fish on that fly in about an hour, I'd say. After this, it was mostly just perch. But again, this fly is so productive. It's super easy. It's super cheap. And it's just so unpretentious. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Tight lines.